Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will try to limit my remarks to points that have not yet been covered by my colleagues thus far. I do have major concerns with the bill. Let's start with the first word of the title. This is an act concerning housing and the needs of homeless persons. And what bothers me about that word "and" is that it suggests that this is one bill or one proposal, when it is in fact four massive structural frameworks to how we deliver housing and housing funding in the state of Connecticut, superimposed one on top of another and passed all at the same time. This is changes to 830G, this is fair share, this is work, live, ride, and a governor's bill, and many, many more small provisions. So I had a question for the proponent of the bill. It made my head spin several times in the Housing Committee how many frameworks we were coming at the state with at the same time, and here we are on the floor of the House with a bill that does just that. So my question to the proponent of the bill is, are there any places where any of the main frameworks of this bill conflict? Are there any places where one structure conflicts with another? And if that happens, what controls? But I guess my question, if I could restate it, is really, has fair share worked in other places? If we need it more than any other state needs it, then I would hope, because others have gone down this path, we have some evidence that this is the best and most efficacious way to address our problem. Is there any evidence of that? Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Philippe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I decline to answer that question directly. I feel like the needs of a place like Washington State or California or Connecticut are not the same. There are differences as to what we are going through in our housing crisis versus what their crises, if they have one, are. So while it may have worked to varying degrees in those places, that doesn't mean that it wouldn't or would work here. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
So with respect to a specific example in my district, where there's a strip mall of essentially businesses, a diner, a Dunkin' Donuts, et cetera, the normal stuff, could mixed housing or middle housing be constructed right there in that strip mall between two businesses? Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Cabras-DeGraw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was confused because the first question was about a high-rise or a single-family home. So middle housing would be the residential building containing not less than 2 dwelling units, not more than 9, not limited to townhomes, duplexes, triplexes, and perfect sixes and cottage clusters, if we're talking about TOD.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Courpas, does that answer your question?
I appreciate the answer, but not exactly. So if we take that definition, does that mean in the strip mall that I described, where there's a diner and a Dunkin' Donuts, that a 9-unit middle housing could be constructed in between those two businesses, and now people would live there? Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Cabras-DeGraw.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, I think it's highly unlikely. I think there are things that are possible but not probable, and I think in that case it would be highly unlikely.
Representative Courpas.
But it would be possible. And to me, that is really exactly what this provision is trying to accomplish.
So in this case, you don't want to see, as you don't want to see people walking too far, you also don't want to see a bunch of parking spaces that are just sitting there empty day after day after day. That has an environmental impact. It also just, is kind of a bummer to have wasted all that space. Through you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Courpas.
Thank you so much to the good chairwoman. I do believe that the free market has a real role to play here, and I really appreciate her saying that. The thing I worry about here, however, is that the financial incentives of the developer who puts the structure up and maybe sells all the units that do not have adequate parking, they really externalize those costs, because they could come in from out of town or out of state, put up the building, and then sort of, bye-bye. And the parking problem falls on the municipalities, the neighbors, the people who bought those units and thought they would have enough parking. So I think the market would absolutely bear a brand new development with not enough parking, and the problems would only be seen afterwards. I'd like to move on, if I could, this evening. I understand the purpose of the bill, and I understand that we need more affordable housing. But I cannot state in strong enough terms how strongly I disagree with the approach that this bill takes. It's based on the fundamental premise that the towns of the state somehow can, but they don't want to develop affordable housing. And I think that premise is untrue. The answer proposed by this bill to that problem is to reach the long arm of the state into Connecticut's 169 towns and cities and force them to force them essentially to build a very high percentage of increased density housing at the expense of all of the other things that we value: the environment, our history, our roads, congestion, sewage, and many other aspects of our life in Connecticut that specifically relate to zoning laws. This bill to me is a radical overreach. One size does not fit all in the state of Connecticut, and I urge my colleagues to oppose it. Thank you.